there's the whole concept of like doing well by doing good. And I really believe in that. And I think it brings a level of quality to my business that I couldn't get otherwise. And I really want that. I really want to feel like there's this solid, generous, anti-racism foundation to my business.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Today's conversation might open up some new possibilities for you about how marketing works. Today's guest is going to tell you about how she uses a free monthly workshop as her main marketing activity. She's going to explain how this accomplishes a bunch of things all at the same time. She gets to raise money for a different anti-racist organization every single month, sell her coaching program, collaborate with guest presenters, and grow her audience. Introducing Ariana Lloyd. Ariana is an LCSW and business consultant who helps therapists build liberation-oriented private practices. She proudly hails from the dry lands of Eastern Oregon, where she was raised along with her 9 siblings by her Mormon and Jewish parents. Ariana grew up farming and fighting and believes these strongly contribute to her approaches in both therapy and business. She now lives in Portland, Oregon, with her 2 young children and her best friend, a golden retriever. All right, let's get into it with Ariana. Welcome, Ariana.
Thank you.
So, all right, let's jump into this. So tell me what made you want to create your first workshop fundraiser?
So I was actually just talking to the person I co-hosted with, and we were trying to remember how he came up with it. And she couldn't remember, so she told me to make something up. But I'll share as much as I can remember. I did the first one with my friend Andrea, who's a really amazing therapist in Portland who does a ton of anti-racism work. And we had been talking a ton more during COVID through Marco Polo videos. She's a great therapist. We both love business. And so we were kind of helping each other stay afloat and wanted to eventually collaborate on something. And then in our mastermind groups with you had said, hey, if you want to market, a really great way to do it is collaborations. So she and I put together what we called a winter workshop last December, 2020. And it was about teaching people how to build their business. And she and I build business in completely different ways, which is really fun, and very complementary ways. So we wanted to bring that together. So that was part of it. And then another part of it was December, and we were about to get the economic stimulus checks for the first time. And I couldn't feel settled about I think I was getting $1,200. And we had just we were still in the midst of COVID, tons of people losing their employment, their economic security. And I had gone the opposite during COVID. Like I had started this business with your help, and my other clinical practice had just exploded. Everything had gone so well for me. So I was like, I'm not the person that this check was meant for, So I was thinking about that. And then also we had gone through this year of more activism around Black Lives Matter. And I was just feeling all of my privilege so much. So I was like, I don't want to just take this money and buy a couch. Like that doesn't feel right. I want to do something different. So that's why we added in the fundraising piece. Also, it was the winter. Portland, where I live, has a ton of people struggling with housing. And there's a lot of places trying to provide support for that. So it made sense to provide this workshop for free, but ask people to please donate to an organization that helps with housing and coats and blankets during the winter. So that's how the first one more or less came together.
Oh, that's so cool. And you said something there that made me curious. What would you say is the difference between how you think about building businesses and your colleague and friend thinks about building businesses?
That's a good question. I think that I think about it in more of a concrete way and like step by step. I don't actually build my businesses that way as much, but when I'm helping other people build their business, that's how I like to think because it just makes so much sense to say like, here's the steps, you just walk, you do A, B, and C. I love that. And I think what she's doing, and I can't fully speak for her, but it's more like organic in the moment, like let's explore it. So it's very complementary because then there's more of a relational component with her piece, which I do. I mean, I build relationships too, but I'm going to focus a lot more on like, what are the steps and check the boxes and get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's not even that you necessarily have different beliefs about it as much as different strengths, different places where you lean into. That's
Yes.
interesting. Yeah.
Which is really fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what have some of the topics been of these events?
Yeah, they have my most well-attended one. So all of them are always three things. I realize that it makes sense. I'm bringing in an expert each time. They always have so much information, and we need it to be really simple and digestible because they're presenting in 20 minutes, basically. So we always just do three things, and they are bringing in something that's both clinical for therapists, but also has somewhere in it, ideally all of it, is from an anti-oppressive framework. And then the second half of the workshop, I take their piece of it, the clinical piece, and I say, and here's how you apply it business wise. So January was our most well attended, and it was like with this clinician in Portland who's well loved. She teaches at Portland State and has basically supervised every therapist in Portland. And she taught, like the three essentials to treating trauma. And it was really great. And then I said, okay, if when you're treating trauma and you get all of this great information about what's effective, here's how you put it in your website so that this language is consistent and so that your website isn't like, turning people away or closing doors, but it's really inviting. It's really still effective in this nice clinical way.
That's interesting. I never see that. That is a unique value you're adding because maybe I've just missed it, but in all of the trainings and workshops and, clinical stuff I've done over 20 years, I never had somebody say like, and now here's how you talk about the work that you're doing when you're offering it to people. Maybe a teeny tiny bit with the Gottmans, but not really. So that's pretty key.
Yeah, it was really fun. And I love the way this clinician words things. I love her style. It's so humanistic, so down to earth. And so the idea of saying, okay, then how can we channel that? How can we channel the best parts of your clinical work into your website? And also with this idea of like, even if someone never hires you, they're still going to benefit from the knowledge that you put on your website. There's just so many benefits, so many advantages to doing it that way. So it was a really fun exercise. And I gave everyone a template. I created a template of like, hey, here's some things to think about to kind of get out your best ideas. And so I used that in the workshop with my colleague, Susie. And then I gave everyone the template so they could do that same work for themselves.
Nice. So how has running these workshops, how many have you run by now?
We just did our 8th one.
So good. So how is it impacting your business?
And so, yeah, in lots of different ways. I was thinking about that a lot preparing for today, talking with you. So I realized, I do my business, Lloyd Collective. I do about 5 cohorts a year. They all run for 8 weeks, and they're small groups. I think around 5 is my ideal number, maybe 6. And so getting people to sign up for my cohorts is a big deal, because it's such a small amount of times that I run it. And it's in its first year of business. I just started it officially last October with your help because I did create your program last January. So with each cohort, at least one person has come from attending those workshops. And in February, actually, I I realized they hadn't organized. I was still in the decision making of like, do I want to keep doing these or not? Because they're a lot of work. And I was just like, well, just do them. I had talked to you. I was like, who should I invite? And you were like, maybe just be the guest yourself, be the speaker. So that one I did like the first 3 steps to starting your private practice. And I only got 9 attendees, but 3 of them signed up for my cohorts. So I was like, this is the best conversion rate ever. So
It's ridiculous.
yes.
It's so
Yes.
ridiculous. And when I say
Yeah.
ridiculous, I mean really, really good.
Yes. That surprised me. So it's really great marketing wise, but also there's so many other pieces to it that I love. Obviously, we're fundraising every month. Like in January, we fundraised for Black Resilience Fund, which is this really radical mutual aid fund in Portland. And we donated 1,600 as a group. And I think, there's the whole concept of like doing well by doing good. And I really believe in that. And I think it brings a level of quality to my business that I couldn't get otherwise. And I really want that. I really want to feel like there's this solid, generous, anti-racism foundation to my business because that just seems right.
I love how it's baked in to your process. It's baked into your marketing process so that instead of like how we often think about marketing as like people think of it as a necessary evil, which I don't think that's a very healthy way to think about it. But not only are you not doing that, but you're baking in these anti-racism practices in the marketing, and that also means that you're not like waiting. There's this narrative of I'm going to wait until my business is really strong and has a ton of excess before I start giving back. There's, I think, a common narrative, very understandably, no judgment on that. But you've just set it up where it's part of growing your business. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's those are my marketing dollars, is like, because when people donate for each fundraising workshop, I always match the donations. So I use obviously the stimulus checks, but then my goal is to donate 10% of my profit from my business to anti-racism organizations. So this makes it really easy for me to do that and to be really transparent about it and to be really accountable. And it's just really fun. It feels great to get to support all these really cool organizations.
So when you were just saying that, I know it's only one of the workshop fundraisers that you did this way, but you were saying you had like a 1/3 conversion rate for the one you did solo.
Mm-hmm.
How about doing more solo ones?
Well, part of the point is to collaborate, right? Like you get in front of someone else's audience, you grow your audience. You taught me that. Um, it's more fun. And also the goal of all of them is to bring in, to highlight people whose identities have been marginalized and to give them more of a spotlight. Obviously, they don't need me to do that for them, but if I get to create these events, then that can be the people I invite. And also I'm, a white-bodied human, and I feel like my perspective on like anti-racism principles in general is not as helpful as someone else who's experienced a lot more of oppression and then done so much work to help other people overcome it or help people identify it. So that's also the reason I don't do as many myself, but I'm sure I will if I haven't planned ahead.
Yeah.
And I'll save it. I'll save it for those.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah.
That's good. That makes sense. So I'm wondering how you choose your guest teachers.
Yeah. So the first one was really easy because it just came together so organically with my friend. And then the second one, it was a colleague that I've done so many like other collaborations with. So I knew she'd be willing to say yes. Like the hard part with the beginning of anything, right, is getting other people to say yes when they don't have any reason to. What I've tried to identify people with different identities than my own that have different areas of expertise that don't have too large of an audience that this wouldn't work for their goals, their business goals or clinical goals. So I think about all of those. What else do I consider? Just people that I think are doing something a little bit radical. They're taking the normal practice and they're pushing it a little bit more, or maybe even a lot. And they like to share that. That's natural for them and they want to. I actually need to do one of my goals for the future is to choose collaborators that they get the word out a lot, because that will be more effective from a marketing standpoint. But with these first 8, I just wanted to get the ball rolling and just see who's interested, see who has these similar values and wants to donate their time, because it is a big ask. So those are some of the things I look at.
That makes sense. I want to give you a little pushback on that idea that there wouldn't be something in it for someone with a bigger audience, because it's not that big of an ask, because you are setting the whole thing up. Like you're doing all the
That's
heavy
true.
lifting.
That's true.
And then, okay, so like full disclosure, I'm going to do the next one with Ariana, and you're just asking me to chat with you for a few minutes before we start.
Mm-hmm.
You suggested what we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You agreed to run it like more as a Q&A or like an interview where you and I are going to be chatting.
Yeah.
And it seems so fun. So
yeah, that's true. It is very fun. Yeah.
yeah. And for folks with a bigger audience, it's still an opportunity to get to talk about what they like to talk about and to show up at someone else's party. And I've been surprised as a podcast host how many people have said yes to this podcast who I thought maybe wouldn't say yes. And yet it does make sense, because like you're setting up the party, you're valuing their work, and you're inviting them in. So I'm not going to be surprised if you end up getting a lot of folks with big audiences as well.
I think that's probably true. The piece that I feel like people actually would be the most excited about is that opportunity to step into fundraising shoes, because that's really fun and it's really exciting. We're in July. So in June, I had this lovely woman named Amalia Muralrio, and she had this organization called Healing by Choice, which is a Detroit organization. And it's just an organization that she had really admired but had never connected with. And so I reached out to them, and they were actually willing to come to the event and in the middle of our event do a little spiel about where the funds go and who it would be helping. And so then Amalia got to connect with them, and I hope that she becomes one of their providers. But it was really exciting to see that connection and for her to and we raised a good amount of money. I think we raised $750 for them. And, for some organizations, every dollar really counts. Some organizations don't, it doesn't matter as much. So I think for the co-host, that is some of their reward, is getting to do that. And I told you, Annie, later that I realized Healing by Choice was initially founded by Adrienne Marie Brown, who I'm such a huge fan of. So it's pretty exciting for people to get to make those connections, in addition to like speak to a new audience and share their, spread their values and connect with people with similar values.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I think I am hesitant, though, to ask someone who's a Black, Indigenous person of color to donate their time, when there's obviously so many problems with someone being asked to donate their time over and over and over and not be compensated.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I want to be really respectful of that.
Yeah. And like you're being really clear about what the ask is, and you're allowing people to choose what they would most like to talk about. I think that can be a particularly tricky thing is, or like a not great thing is if, as like white folks, for example, if we're asking BIPOC people to come in and educate around oppression,
Mhm.
and uncompensated.
Exactly.
And yeah, so I see how tricky that is. And like, I like that you're allowing people to choose what do you want to talk about. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm letting them know that I recognize it's a donation of their time. So they are donating their time in part to my audience and all of my people and hopefully all of theirs as well, and to this organization. And I donate money to that organization. So it's kind of like they offer a highly valued service that people otherwise would have to pay them a lot of money to access. And so they're saying, I'm going to offer this service for free on behalf of this organization. And I'm going to channel all the funds that would have come to me to this organization, which is pretty awesome. And it's really cool. And I make that clear to them so that they understand why they would want to do that versus like, can you please just come do something for free?
We're going to get right back to Ariana, including some of the business results that she's gotten from these workshops. First, I'm going to take a quick break to tell you about Create Your Program. This is our process to help you expand beyond private practice. You're going to go from having an idea or maybe a bunch of ideas to actually launching your pilot program. And then that is going to lead to building your business beyond private practice. This is a small group experience where you'll get a lot of brave work done with other driven and open-hearted entrepreneurs like you. This is for you if you're a therapist or a healer and you want to expand your business. We've improved this process over several iterations and years. This is not a passive program. You're going to receive a lot of support and you're going to get all of your questions answered. We are not fucking around. And people are often really surprised at how much support they get when they sign up for this program. I really want you to succeed. If you're listening to this before September 8th, 2021, the price is about to go up. So if you've been meaning to jump in, this is an excellent time to do that. So head over to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn much more about it and register. Okay, let's get back to Ariana. So let's talk about how much work it takes to do each of these behind the scenes. How much planning does each one take? What are the systems you're using? Like, are you using Zoom, your email provider? Like, how does it all fit together on the geeky side?
I'm still cleaning up all of those systems. I use ActiveCampaign for emailing, and I do use Zoom for the event so we can easily record it. The concepts are like the easiest and the most fun to come up with. And so is finding the person. Those are the parts I love because you just get to be like, who's doing the coolest thing that I know? I'm going to reach out to them and then pitch it to them. And it was very nerve-wracking pitching in the beginning. And now it's not such a big deal. So that's good. The work with them is really marketing them. It's getting people to know why this matters and why they would want to show up and why they would want to donate. That's where all the work is.
And what are you doing over there? What are you doing on the marketing side?
So I do emails and I highlight the person who's speaking and, why their message matters. And I try to think of different angles to look at it, just like we all do when we're marketing. But I run, my other practice is clinical supervision. So every speaker that I have come, they're teaching something that all of my supervisees are trying to figure out. So it's really fun. So like the person this week, her name is Silvana Espinoza Lau, and she taught about like 3 questions to ask yourself when working with Black, Indigenous people of color. And Silvana immigrated to this country. She has dual citizenship and, kind of has seen what oppression looks like in our country and has this really, really valuable perspective. So as I'm doing all of my clinical supervision sessions, because that's my entire practice, I'm seeing all of these questions come up that are around mostly white clinicians working with individuals with different identities. So I'm keeping track of all of those questions and all those ideas. And then I share some of those in my marketing emails. Obviously, I don't disclose any information about supervisees, but kind of like think like, how do you prepare when you have a new client on your schedule and they very clearly have different identities than you? Do you prepare? And if so, what are you doing? And how do you make sure that those are the best things to do? So I put a lot of heart into my marketing emails. I also tell my clinical community here in Portland about all of these. I try to make sure everybody knows about them to build the community around it so that people feel like, okay, this is my monthly like free clinical training that I go to and I donate if they want to donate. I do a lot around that. And I've started experimenting with Instagram around it, which has been really fun as well.
And you're using basically those same messages both on Instagram and in your emails.
I am, yes. Yep. And also talking about the organization. So it's really fun for me because each month I'm immersing myself in that person's work, the co-presenter's work, their mission, their values, and also in the organization's stuff as well. Because I want to know inside out so I can easily tell people about it and why, and really feel why it actually matters, not just like sell it, but really be like, okay, I get this. I get why like this specific issue matters this way. Like, the Healing by Choice organization from June, they have all of these clinicians of color that are either female or non-gender conforming. And they provide services to communities of color that are alternative healing services. And a lot of healing practices are rooted in white supremacy. So they're providing all these services at no cost or sliding scale. So when you donate, that's what you're donating to. So I really want to like fully understand why an organization does what they do, why it matters, why people who don't care about it will want to care about it, why they actually would want to be involved and support it. So I immerse myself in all of that and then just try to be really clear in communicating it.
I read some of your emails that were inviting people to sign up for these events. And I really loved how you put yourself in the shoes of the participant of like, and sometimes you are in the shoes of the participant and you can share that. Like, I've struggled with this. This is something I want to know more about. And you've really done it in this honest and vulnerable way instead of like this more kind of purely promotional way. And it's also much more interesting to read.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, I remember the one in March, we had Kate Desjardins come present. And you know Kate, they're very lovely and non-binary, and they do a lot of work around gender and sexuality. And, all month I'm wrapping my mind more around. Ideally, I have some peripheral understanding of what they're talking about, but I do want to go deeper each month. And so in one of those emails, which I know I shared with you, I was talking to my 5-year-old about like, hey, some people don't feel like they're a boy or a girl. They just feel something else. And so we had this really lovely conversation around it. And of course, my child didn't care at all. Like that just seemed so normal to them, right? It wasn't like, it wasn't this politicized thing or anything that they had any big reaction to. It was so normal, which I loved. And I know I shared that in an email. I guess I want to like, I got actually really good feedback from someone in our mastermind group of like, as a white person doing anti-racism work, you're not setting yourself up as like, I'm the expert and do what I say, the rest of you are wrong, but more like, hey, I'm walking right alongside you. I'm learning right along with you. And that really helped me figure out how to talk about it and how to do the work in a way that's inviting and also honest, because that's actually what it is. That's very true.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've done all this research, you've done all this like coordinating of, inviting the guest, all of that. And then you're about to hit go. Are you really nervous before an event?
I was a lot more nervous in the earlier ones. Now I mostly am just excited.
Oh, that's so nice. How did you get from there to there?
Yeah, I think that I've started to realize that I want to build relationships with the person who's presenting in whatever way that they want to, like however much capacity. So then it feels special to connect with them that way. It's already special, but then there's a relationship in place. I think it's that feeling more invested in the organization and being like, I can't wait to tell people about this. When people show up to the workshops, I don't know how they feel about this, but I greet all of them individually and talk to them and see like, how are you doing? Or it looks like you're still at work. And I love that. It's really fun. And I love taking whatever the person shares and turning it into something business. I love that challenge and the creativity. And I like teaching those things. I think it's really fun to do that, to find those connections and help people run better businesses. So I guess it's all of those pieces that I get excited about now versus like being afraid of looking a certain way or afraid of, all of the fears that come up with running a workshop.
Yeah. I hear you're focusing on different things. You're focusing on the relationships and the things that you want to do in that time. I feel like that happens for me too, both in recording this podcast and in doing any kind of presentation, that there's a big shift for me in if I'm focusing on the participants or the guest or what it is I want to be doing, that just takes up my brain. And so then there's less room for anxiety.
It gets you out of your head and just more into like the connection, which obviously feels a million times better.
Yeah. So you greet everybody when they show up. How do you balance the attendees getting to ask questions and maybe feel heard if that's what they're looking for, and then not having that take up too much time?
I'm still playing around with how that works. And a lot depends on the presenter's style and whether they want more of a presentation style versus an interactive one. And I'm also learning how to coach the presenter ahead of time so that they know what my audience is like, what works best in this format. So it's kind of fun to keep learning about that. In general, I'm encouraging presenters to pause, every 3 to 5 minutes or so to check in and at least like look at people's faces and see what's happening. And if they want to, they can elicit questions then as well. We always pause in the middle of these events. The events are an hour. The presenter, we spend 5 minutes saying hello and starting. The presenter goes for 20 minutes. We pause right in the middle. And that's when we do questions and donations. So there's a good 10 minutes or so for that. And then the second half is me presenting and maybe a few questions again at the end. So we do try and build in some audience participation.
I'm so excited. This is getting me even more excited. This is going to be, this episode is coming out after we will have done that.
Oh, so hopefully they've come and now they know about the behind the scenes.
Yes. So, and now in anticipation of that, like what advice would you have for me and other guest teachers to be most valuable? You already said like pause, look at people.
I encourage people not to worry about being professional because, we're doing this at the end of the workday. People are worn out. And also like, the whole goal of them is anti-oppression or anti-racism. So not necessarily what we're taught about professionalism. So showing up really genuine and authentic and with their 3 concepts, keeping them as simple as possible and not in the expert realm. Like they can bring their expert self to the questions if needed. But usually I found that when you're an expert, you're so far ahead of your audience that you got to like bring it all the way back to the beginning and share from that place and then add to it. And often I have people attending that are not therapists. They own other businesses, but they still want like a clinical mindset. Like my sister and I were talking about this. She has her MBA and she's the chief financial officer for a large company and she attends them. And we were talking about like all of the benefits of thinking like a therapist, like how much it actually impacts your bottom line and how much like financially better your business does. So I want my presenter to like share so that even someone who's not a therapist and not like thinking about all that stuff gets it. Like they get the concepts and how to implement it, and they can engage with it. They can ask questions around it and understand. So that's one main piece. The other main piece is to think about why the organization matters to them, and not just in like, on a deeper level. Like, why is this one really touching to you? Is this something personal, or someone in your family has been affected by it? Or like, what's important about this, so that they can share that with the audience, and the audience can develop an attachment or connection to the organization we're all donating to as well.
Okay, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So one thing that happens in the event is that you talk about your program. Where in the process do you do that?
That's right in the middle, actually. So when we pause for donations and questions, I also ask the presenter, if they haven't already, to let people know how they can connect with them further. So make sure maybe they have like a newsletter people can sign up for, or something that they're putting in the chat box, or making it really easy for people to stay connected to them. And then that's also when I say, and I'm still working this out, but still what I say, oh, by the way, if you want to start a private practice, you can, and a private practice rooted in these values, then, here's when my next cohort starts. And here's very briefly what it looks like. But honestly, I probably spend less than like 30 seconds on that part, and just try to keep it simple. But people who sign up for the event are also signing up for my newsletter, so they'll get more messages from me that way too. I'm still finding the right balance. And I guess right now I'm leaning on the side of under sharing about my own business. And I don't really see too many drawbacks from doing it that way, actually.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you are, well, this is me being coachy, as
Right.
long as you're being 100% clear about what your program is and like joyfully sharing it, then yeah, people they know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even just saying, hey, it's an 8-week private practice program. Here's when our cohorts are, and here's the values. That, to me, that seems like enough for people to either have a yes or a no about whether they're interested.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's a really simple concept.
That's right. If you want to start a private practice.
That's right. And specifically, like if these values are speaking to you and you want to start one in 8 weeks, because that's a commitment right there.
Mm-hmm. It's a really good way to start a private practice, to do it with a lot of support and really like quickly.
Yes, I think so too.
Waste time.
Just get it done. Yeah.
Don't fuck around. Just work with Ariana. Get it done.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just a fun way to do it too.
So of the folks who have signed up for your program, do you know about how many, like what percentage of them have attended one of your events, one of your workshop fundraisers first?
I would say that probably 25% at least.
Oh, okay. So more than half of them, or around 75%, find you a different way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's true. And it's usually through colleagues who know about these events and are paying attention to them and are interested in them or excited about them. And so they're telling people about my work.
Okay, so it may even be more than 25% when we take that into account. Okay.
Yes, which is pretty cool.
So will you tell us a little bit more about your 8-week program? Like, how does it work?
How does it work? Yes. So I should say first, though, I created this program with your help, Annie, and it's a way better program than it would have been if I had created it on my own. And I don't mean to embarrass you, or,
Well, you can't see my face right now. I am
okay.
very, very moved by hearing that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I really appreciated your support in creating it. Honestly, it wouldn't have been the same at all. None of this would have been. So I feel really, really grateful for our work together. So it's 8 weeks, and there's all of these videos and all of this worksheets, and just tons of not tons. I don't want to scare people, but there's a checklist that you get at the start of the program, and then there's videos and worksheets that you're going to do each week. And so each week you go through, you do your homework, you do the videos. I'm walking you through every step. And then we meet as a cohort for 2 hours and talk about some of the logistics, but also the values and the emotional experience of starting a business, because it brings up emotions for people. Honestly, it's always 50-50. It's always 50%. Hey, how do I do this part on my website? Or, hey, what does this mean when I'm registering my LLC? But then the other part is like, hey, I can't wrap my head around this because I feel like such an imposter. Help me through this mental block. Or like, or the scarcity mindset, which is so common of like, hey, I'm afraid if I tell people that this is really what I want to provide therapy around, that I'll lose clients. So really helping people connect with like their deepest, truest vision. That's definitely a lot of the cohort work. So that's how it is. They come in, they don't have anything done. And then by the end of the 8 weeks, they've, got their concept down, they've registered their business, they've built a beautiful website around it. They've got their documentation, they have their accounting system, set up their bank accounts. They've practiced their whole entire system from start to finish, and they can start seeing clients. And some people even like are doing consults in the middle of the program, screening for their clients so that they're ready to start seeing clients as soon as the program's done. So I'm always so impressed with what people do and like with how successful they are with their businesses. It's really, really exciting.
That's awesome. And are you still offering any one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, I do. I do one-on-one coaching, and some people actually build their practices that way because it just works better for their schedule. I guess I'm not sure how much to share, but I do some of the same work that they would have done in the cohort, but we're just doing it one-on-one instead. So I do that for brand new practices, but also a lot of people come to me for like, hey, my practice isn't working, or I want to change the structure of it, or I want to change my focus or the values it's built on, or they've been in practice for like 5 or 10 years and they want to shift it. So some people will use my consultations for that, and that's pretty good. That's a lot of fun for me, actually, to get that challenge of like a new problem and help them sort through it and figure it out.
Very cool. And you were on another really really popular podcast, Side Hustle School, with Chris Guillebeau. And I'm wondering what it was like to hear that.
That was really fun, actually. So I saw somewhere, maybe on Twitter or Facebook, somewhere that they're like, hey, we're looking for more people to talk about on our podcast. And I had listened to Side Hustle School. It's how old is it 4 or 5 years old? I don't know. But like before I started working with you, and when I was very, very, very lost business wise, personally, like so many things where I was lost. But I like listening to that podcast, I was like, this is amazing. And it makes you feel like you can do it, which I love. Like you could do any business you want, which that's what I needed at that time. I still love that. So then when I saw that come up, I was like, why not? So I submitted the application, which was ridiculous. It was very detailed. And then they sent back another one saying, hey, we want more details. So I submitted that one. And then they were like, hey, we're considering you. Here's a bunch more questions.
Wow.
So I sent that one. Yes. So they do a really good job interviewing by email the person to kind of figure out, is this a good fit for our show? So that was cool to see that process. What was it like hearing it? It was, I was pulling up carpet in my bedroom, and there's hardwood floors underneath. And I was pulling up this disgusting carpet, and I was like, oh yeah, that was supposed to come out a month ago. Did it ever come out? They never emailed me about it. So I just found it on the podcast. And I was like, look, I think this one's about me. And so I heard it, and it was really, really special. It was really a little bit surreal and really special to hear how they put together my story. And I don't know, it's just really, really valuable, really important to me. It still doesn't feel quite real because like I said, I just started this business not even a year ago. But it was, yeah, I felt really honored. I really admire Chris. I've seen him speak here in Portland a few times and follow his work. And so it felt really like an honor.
Mm. And so he said that you had brought in 10K. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the one thing that I was like, oh, I wish they'd gotten that. I wish they'd asked me for the update because I think by then it had been like 22,000. So that's pretty significant, but
that's a good problem though. That's a really good problem.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, do you have room for one more question?
Yeah.
So how do you do so many different things. How do you get yourself kind of geared up or calmed down or in the right zone to be effective and joyful in your workday?
Geared up or calmed down to be effective? This is such a great question.
You see, I am avoiding the word productive because I'm like, that is I don't like that word anymore. So you hear me kind of like looking for new ways of talking about it.
I like that. I like that question a lot. How do I do that? I have, I think I do it in a lot of little ways, actually. So there's not like some big way that I start my day at all. Definitely having all of these deadlines forces me to get myself in whatever mode I can so that I can do my work. That helps a lot. Being really balanced and not stressed helps a ton. So like I go on a lot of walks with my kids and my dog, and I take naps every day, and I try to be, as healthy as I can. That actually helps a ton because then I'm more genuine with the work versus like, I have to get this done. What else helps me do it? Yeah, it's those deadlines. It's telling people that we're going to do this thing, and then people are expecting me to do that thing. So then I make it happen.
Yep.
I love it. That's the main thing.
I love it.
Yeah.
So key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ariana.
Thanks for having me, Annie. This has been really special.
Now I'm going to loop back and share some takeaways that really stand out to me. Takeaway number 1, the workshop fundraisers started as a way to do a couple of important things at once: grow her business by collaborating and creating value, and raising funds for radical BIPOC organizations.
So it made sense to provide this workshop for free, but ask people to please donate to an organization that helps with like housing and coats and blankets during the winter. So that's how the first one more or less came together. Takeaway
number 2. Ariana used to feel nervous before her workshops, but now she feels excited. She's started focusing on her connection to her guest teacher, her connection to the participants, and what she's there to facilitate. That doesn't leave as much room for anxious thoughts.
It gets you out of your head and just more into like the connection, which obviously feels a million times better.
Takeaway number 3. Ariana's advice for her guest teachers is great advice for any person who's presenting anything. Keep it simpler than you think you need to.
When you're an expert, you're so far ahead of your audience that you got to like bring it all the way back to the beginning and share from that place and then add to it.
You can find out more about Ariana at lloydcollective.com. That's Lloyd with 2 L's, collective.com. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this conversation supportive, please share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is how we reach more people. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.